have the privilege of introducing our next speaker. We have David Hogrefe. David and I go way back. He is the president right now of his own company, Sandpine Alliance, as well as the president for Sandpine Alliance International, which he founded. It's a nonprofit. He spent the last 15 years working with fire in the state of Florida on the Florida Park Service, the District 4 Viper team, and as a private contractor going out west, and is helping tribal fire operations in South Sudan, northern region of Africa. David is also one of our members for the steering committee for the Central Florida Fire Council. So please welcome David Hogrefe, our next presenter.
Hello, everyone, and hopefully you're all not asleep after lunch. Welcome back to the Central Florida Prescribed Fire Council, and I am broadcasting live here from Citrus County. Beautiful day. It's kind of a bummer we're inside, but we're going to make the best of it. I saw a bunch of my friends there listed on the chat, so hello, everyone. Wish I could see you in person, and hopefully next year we will, but this is the best we can do with what we got. Start my slideshow here. Beginning full screen. Okay, what I'm going to be talking about today is the Florida burner's value in Western fire contracting and just Western fire in general. But before we get there, since I know a couple of you are asleep and I can't hear you, we're going to do a little drill to wake you all up. Those of you from Engine Academy that know me may have experienced this before, but I need all of you guys to play along. I need you all to spell the word shop. That's right, S-H-O-P. I can't hear you. You're a little far away, but spell it a little louder. Shop, S-H-O-P. One more time, spell it for me. Okay, good. Now, what do you do at a green light? Okay, I bet at least half of you said stop. I can't hear you say it, but I bet you did. If you did, just go ahead and throw a little, yeah, I did in the chat. Looks like the chat is blowing up. So hopefully you guys are awake and able to hear me now. So into my presentation here. Ultimately, a lot of you have already been out. There's quite a few on there I saw that are just getting back. Myself and Brooke, our team's been back now a little bit. Others are just coming back, but it's been a very busy season. In fact, the last 2 years have been very busy out west with the fire season. And you might be like, what does this have to do with prescribed fire? But I have found over and over, seeing dozens and even hundreds of Florida firefighters out west, that inevitably their value and experience in prescribed burning, especially a burn boss like the people on this call, is absolutely critical and incredibly helpful in Western fire. Yes, they have different topography. Yes, they have different, fuels. Their weather might be a little different. But if you spend a couple seasons out there as a Florida burner, you'll quickly get a hand for how things burn and how they should be managed, how you can do burnouts, and how fire is going to behave. And with that, for those of you that haven't been out west, I'm going to start at the basics and sort of show what you need to do to get ready for 22. This season's winding down, but inevitably, with the way the world's going, we're going to continue to go out west, and the call and the need for Florida firefighters is going to increase. So first off, if you work for an agency or been in fire a while, you probably have all these classes and most of the requirements you need. You're going to need S-130, S-190, L-180, I-110, IS-700, basic trainings. A lot of you guys get that in one class now. For the state, you may do a moderate pack test, the 25-pound. To go out west, it is the federal standard. You need the arduous pack test, which is 45 pounds for 3 miles in 45 minutes or less. And it is called arduous for a reason. It's not really that bad, and I find it's mostly up here, mental toughness. We've got guys in their 60s who work for us regularly, and they do this with no problem at all. But I've had 20-year-old kids come out and fail it. And I think it's that experience, that knowledge of what you're getting into, preparation for it, and the ability to stay mentally tough, even though it might hurt a little bit. So just practice it. I challenge you, do not try to do it cold turkey. Try it before. And go meet at your local Forest Service station when they have them on, or talk to your local contractors when they're putting on trainings. With that, and usually putting on at the same time, is the RT-130 annual refresher. And again, this is a day-long training course that's just refreshing you on what you learned in S-130, S-190, and what's going on out west, what to get ready for it, kind of like what we're talking about now. Don't forget your proper PPE. If you're using it on a burn, you're going to for sure need it out west, but you might need it a little bit more. So make sure you're covered head to toe with all of that, along with your fire shelter, a radio, and don't forget your task books. If you guys don't have a task book, I greatly challenge anyone who wants to go out west to open their FFT1 IC5 task book. And your agency administrator can do that. Local Forest Service, if you have a good relationship with them, they can do that for you. Or if you're going out with one contractor over and over, talk with the contract administrator and he can do it as well. Also, good things to know are what to bring, where you're going, what you're doing out there. You know, if you're working like me most of the time as an engine boss, maybe a strike team leader, you'll already have experience going. But if it's your first time going as an engine operator on a hand crew or on a dozer, they're all very separate, and we'll get into resources shortly. But are you going to North California? Are you going to South California? Those can be totally different animals. Are you going to the Midwest? Are you going to the Intermountain region? What time of year is it? Late season, early? How hot or cool is it going to be? Are you going to a fire that just started up? Incident complexity. Type 1 fire versus a type 5. Type 5, you probably won't even get called from here. But when it gets going later, you might be on a 1 and then get sent around to a smaller fire. And be ready for both. Don't expect to stay in a hotel. That happens in the Southeast. We're a little spoiled over here. But when you're out west, prepare to be in a tent or just sleeping on a mat on the ground. Make sure to follow your weather and look ahead. Bring the right kind of clothes. Even in the summertime in the mountains on the far north, it can get very cold, ice on your tent kind of stuff. And that's not fun if you just brought a light windbreaker. Also consider if you're driving or flying. If you're going on an engine leaving Florida, you've got lots of extra room for gear. It may not be a problem. But if you're flying out, there are weight requirements. And our Florida Forest Service teams are awesome about this. They have meetings every year. They have a great list that tells you what to bring. If you're interested in going on a hand crew, I encourage you to meet with them and get on that list, get ready to go, because they need help. We need help as private world. Everyone out west is looking for more firefighters, and the Florida crews I've seen over and over, as we'll get to stories later, have proved to be some of the best resources. And anytime I see someone on here, my friends from Engine Academy, who want to go out west, I gladly take any of them. Also, like I said, be ready to camp or spike out. And spike out might be you have a main camp, but you may be on a fire and you have to actually spike out on the line somewhere, sometimes called a ron or a coyote. I was mentioning resources. Got a couple pictures here from different fires we've been on and different resources we've been on. You know, so you can have things like the normal one. You go out on an engine, you got a 3-man crew, engine boss, 2 engine operators. You could be on a hand crew and there's 20 of you guys all out there, all sorts of different experiences, great cohesion, make a lot of friends, but there's also that, you know, struggle sometimes with 1 or 2 people not getting along. It's a critical thing. Try to find your friends and bring them with you. Or you could be on a piece of heavy equipment like a dozer. And with our Florida Forest friends, those guys have some great experience. And I've seen some of them out west on contract dozers. And I've also seen a bunch of Western contract dozer guys who've come down and helped us in Florida. So pick your equipment, know your experience. And then if you have a task book, try to pick your task book ahead of time with what you're planning to go out as. Okay, Florida Western firefighting groups in Florida. Here's a list of a couple of them just to share with you guys. These are ones who all have U.S. Forest Service contracts known as the Viper contract. And these guys are all over the state. They send stuff out. I've worked with all of them in the past in all of their trucks. I know these different guys, some of them from way back. And yeah, take a look at the list, screenshot it, you know, look for them on Facebook. They've all got pages. In fact, Bird Dog is one of our sponsors from this one here. So, hey, Carlos, thanks for sponsoring us. And, you know, just keep them in mind if you're going out west. Forest Service is great. If you can get in with them, Florida Forest Service hand crews. But if you can't and you want to try it out, reach out to one of these guys. With that, I want to tie in a story. And this is something that happened with actually one of our own on the steering committee here, Mike Orlando. And I know he and Ashley are out there, so hello, guys. But quite a story he had from last year working out west on a fire. He went out with Wildland Services, and this story here shows the value of a Florida burner out there, his experience. Ultimately, he was on the North Complex Fire in the Plumas National Forest. Started here 9/8 of 2020 is the date. There is an article as well that we'll share in the chat there later. You guys can look it up. Actually had a news article about him. Got a copy of it right here. And he's kind of a hero now. You know, he's got his 5 minutes of fame for sure. But ultimately, the fire had a 215,000 acre run in 24 hours. He was just an engine boss on this incident, but from working with his division and his div trainee, they had seen his knowledge and experience and realized, you know, this guy knows what he's doing. And as things started exploding with this front coming through and the activity, they ended up leaving him in charge of, as you can see, 11 people and a lot of equipment. Ultimately, he made a safety zone and protected and saved all their lives. But in this, I've got a couple pictures we'll flip to here in a minute. That fire front that pushed it through, which while this was happening, we were out in North California as well. We were on the Mendocino and had a crazy run there as well. But 45-mile-an-hour winds, getting those Santa Ana kind of winds, 200-foot flame lengths. If you've seen the trees out there, you'll understand that. They do have some monster trees, and it was extremely dry, 200 plus days since rain. Ultimately, they ended up making a big safety zone. I'll flip to the pictures back. You can see on the left, Mike Orlando was guiding some of the local dozers there to make this gravel yard into a bigger safety zone so that they'd be ready for this fire when it comes. And you can see the middle picture. He actually called into aerial resources to confirm the fire spread and let them know how fast it was moving so they could get the rest of the division to safety as well. The division had been with him earlier on, had to leave and actually meet with a bunch of other equipment to try to get them out of the way in time. And, I'm not going to go into when the division should have or shouldn't have done that. That's a whole nother story. What I'm trying to point out here is that a Florida firefighter stepped up to the task, fulfilled it calmly and efficiently. And if you guys know Mike, he's not saying this on his own. He's a very quiet-spoken, humble, awesome guy, but has great experience and knowledge. And that shown out there under pressure. And where do they say diamonds are made? Diamonds are made under pressure. And Mike became a Florida diamond out there for sure. And ultimately, they stayed in the safety zone for about 24 hours. Started about 10:30 in the morning. He started clearing the line and keeping contact with aerial resources or anyone he could, letting them know what's going on. They weren't given, the order to get out of there. So he's like, let's make this as safe as we can to make a stand here if we have to. And ultimately, we're blocked in that night, total smoke out. Trees dropped down on the roads. They had to cut their way out the next day. But everyone made it, and they made it safely. He tells a story of when the flame front got there. And picture on the right, there's, as it was getting closer, 200-foot flame lengths were recorded by multiple people in weather observations. Ultimately, the equipment was in the middle of the safety zone, and they said the heat was so intense that you could feel it inside the cabs of the dozers and the engines. Not only that, with the AC going even, it was sucking the oxygen out. They said it was getting harder to breathe. That's how intense and powerful this fire was drawing it in. So you might be like, well, we don't have fires like that in Florida, but look how a Florida firefighter handled this out there and was the one of all the resources there to step up. I say that's pretty impressive. And I also like to say that we don't have fires like that in Florida because of Florida burners like you guys. There's been some really good articles, and I'll pull one out here as well. Ultimately, it was August 30th of 21. NPR did an article by Lauren Summers. Some of you guys might have seen it. In fact, I believe it was posted on several of the fire websites that I follow. And in that, it talked about a few stats. It said from 1998 to 2018, 70% of all prescribed fire was done in the Southeast. So not just Florida, but our fellow states with similar fuels and a lot of Florida firefighters working in those areas. And that is pretty impressive. Not only with that, in 2021, so far, we've burnt over 1.6 million acres in Florida, prescribed fire. And California, up till this article's point, had done about 35,000 acres prescribed fire. Now they've had, I think it's last I had seen by CAL FIRE, over 2.5 million acres wildfire. So they're beating us on acreage, but it may not be what we want. And I believe a lot of the success in our state is due to burners like you guys doing your job, agency, private, personal landowners, everybody going out there and keeping our state managed the way it historically was. We could go into a whole spiel about fire in Florida and how it's been like this for a long time. I don't think I need to teach all you guys that. But before we were here, the Native Americans doing that, before any people were here, lightning was doing it. And I like to say that the Florida burner is the modern lightning. And that is what we're doing here. I want to go look at the chat real quick because it looks like it is blowing up. Let's see, I don't look like Orlando. He's on here. Good deal. Awesome, awesome. And we're going to get into answering some of your questions here in a minute. Ben and those guys will hop on. But I wanted to show a few other pictures here. This is actually from California on the Mendocino, similar time frame. Diana Daniels, if she's on, that's a picture of her over there watching for spots over the line. We were on night shift and it was just blowing up. We didn't get boxed in or anything like he had, but we had to do some night burnouts with a bunch of hand crews. It got pretty wild for sure. Brooke over here kicking ash, taking names. We ended up staying on that fire for almost 2 months. And there are guys out this year, I think, who've done almost 3 months. It's incredibly busy out west. So I encourage all of you guys who, whether you've been out there a ton of times, to keep going, or if you never have, or you have crew coming up under you that want to go out, get this training, get this experience, and use your Florida burning skills out west and come help us. Hopefully some of these pictures and the stories will get you guys excited to come do the same. Obviously, we don't expect this kind of stuff to happen a lot. Mike's story is an incredible story, and it's a pretty wild tale that he'll be able to tell his grandkids. Most of the time you go out, it may not be this exciting. You may be on a mop-up duty for 2-3 weeks, barely see any fire. You might be just clearing line. You might be running like we did in, I want to say, 30,000-foot hose lay over a week. Then CAL FIRE came in, used our hose lay. We never even got to use it. We had to come back in the week afterwards when it was out, mop it up, and then drag all 30,000 feet out. So it's not all guts and glory. There's a lot of boring, slow times as well, but it all makes for a good story. And the friends that I see on here that I see out west, and the friends I see out west and get impressed by the Florida burners, you'll have them for life. And in fact, I was just talking with another Florida burner who was out on a hand crew, and several Western hand crews were out doing the burning, and it wasn't going too well. The next day, they turned it over to the Florida hand crew. I believe it was one of our Florida Forest Service crews, so a bunch of great burners on it. And when they turned it over to them, it went flawlessly, no issues, and they're like, from now on, those guys will be doing the burning. So with that, I know there's a lot of questions probably coming in. Let me go to my chat and see if we can answer a couple.
Ben, this is Ben here.
Go ahead.
I guess you don't have a lot of questions on the Q&A yet, so
Okay.
if you have questions, go ahead and type them in. But I'll start with a couple that I have. So if you're working for a government agency, is it a conflict of interest to go out on a contract?
Not as long as you have approval. We always tell anyone who's with the agencies, and we have a lot of agency guys who do, just go ahead and talk to your supervisors, make sure you have the time approved to go off. And then once you have that, some of them require a form to fill out. Let us know and let us know your availability, and you can come out with us. Obviously, if you're already signed up for a forestry crew, do not tell us the same week. Fulfill that duty once you're free afterwards, then let us know, and we'll put you on our list.
Okay. And so, yeah, so you kind of touched on it. So you can, if you work for, I guess, a large enough, like a federal agency, you can go out on a detail through your agency. But if you work for like a smaller state agency or, private contract, property or something, you can sign on with contractors and go out for a week or two, or how as long as the usual stint?
We recommend at least be ready for 14 days plus 2 travel. That would be your minimum. You could be gone for 3 weeks, a month, depends how much time you've got. But always prepare at least for 16 days, 2 travel days and 14 on the line.
Okay. So, but if you say, hey, I'm going to take vacation for these 16 days, you can get back in time. You're not going to say like, oh, sorry, I'm stuck out on a fire, and then have to tell your job that you're not going to be home for another month.
Yeah, if you only have a certain amount of days as a contractor, we'll already have a plane ticket set up for you guys, so you can be back on the day you're supposed to be. If they want you to extend, we'll try to rotate crew, and so we have a lot of people lined up ahead of time to rotate. If you can talk to your boss and extend, that's great, but that's up to you and your supervisor.
Okay, you're not going to get stuck out there, and then your job's going to be upset with you.
No, we've never had that issue. We always try to get them back. Same thing with the forestry crews. They're going to let you know, and if they do extend, they go through everybody on the crew, and they'll either rotate out those who can or send the crew back and get a new crew in.
And how does it work with like workers' compensation and insurance?
Mm-hmm.
You guys cover that for the time that they're on your crew?
As a private contractor, you'll be under the workers' comp and liability insurance of the contractor. With the state's self-insured. I won't go into all their details. They know it better than I do. But when I work for the state, ultimately you're protected and covered by them like an employee. So private people who go, or contractors who go, or other agencies who go with different, go with forestry, you'll be like a forestry employee, protected by them, but also by your own. But with a contractor, each contractor who signs up for Piper has to show proof of workers' comp and liability. So you're covered with.
And I don't know if it obviously depends on your experience level and skills or certifications, but what is the pay like? Is there a kind of a range that you could say like, well, if you took a 2-week trip, obviously you're taking your vacation time, then you can make a good chunk of change in the process.
Absolutely. And there's a huge range depending on your experience. A lot of people want to see your certs, your quals. If you've been out there before, obviously, if you're going as an engine boss or a crew boss or a dozer boss, you're going to be making a lot more than if you're going out as a first-time FFT2. But you'll be looking, even as a crew member, looking at anything from 250, 300 a day. Engine bosses can make anything from 350 to 5, even 600 a day for some of the Western ones.
Wow.
Huge range depending on knowledge and experience. But it's definitely good pay. I worked for the state of Florida for 10 years, and I would try to take a couple weeks off every year and go out west. That made a huge bump in my pay grade as a ranger.
It's like giving yourself a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's usually like a vacation. I always looked at it as I get a paid Western vacation. I don't necessarily get to sightsee, but you get in some of the most beautiful country working these fires, you know, and sometimes you see it before fire or only after fire. But still, you'll make a lot of friends and see a lot of new country.
Very cool. Okay, so we do have some questions coming in from Diana. Do you feel your training as a Florida burn boss helped you to navigate the chain of command issues in federal incidents out west?
Hey, Diana. And yes, absolutely. Florida burning, if I went out west and had not been a Florida burner, just, you know, focused on structure or wildfire, I believe I would have been blown away. But the first fire I went to out there were an absolute ton of burnouts. And it was great to see, you know, the terrain, the fuels, how it was different, but also to see as a burner watching, you know, a hotshot crew do it like, wow, I would do it like this, or that's cool. I like how they're doing that. And that's how I would have thought they would have done it. And you start working it, you start looking at everything like, how would this burn? How would this burn? As a Florida burner, I mean, if I ever saw Sam Van Hook wanting to go out west, you know, like, absolutely, this guy is a legend in the burning community. You'd be great to have out west. I doubt he has any interest to do it, but those kind of guys to teach the young people how it burns out west and just to see fuel and to get that knowledge of what fire does in any fuel weather and topography is incredibly valuable. And that prescribed burn experience was absolutely what made me want to keep going out west and see more of it.
All right. Next question is from Anonymous, but what is the best way to contact you if we're interested in an assignment?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Myself, if you can find me on Facebook, otherwise, you know, I can drop it in there. I can leave a phone number in the group. Most of these people are my friends, so I don't mind sharing it with you guys. But get a hold of me or look up people like Bird Dog, one of our vendors. Look at Wildland Services, Williams Fire. Look up Steve Guckian and his stuff. Look up any of these guys. Most of them have a presence. And if not, just ask around. Probably half the people on the chat are our friends, and talk to them and say, hey, I'm interested in going out west. Can you put me in touch with one of these guys? Or what's your experience? Who have you worked for? Who would you like to go back with? And that's a great way to do it. But and Florida Forest Service, we had Keith Moosel on here before. I live super close to the Withlacoochee. Took most of my training there back in the day. And that's where they send out a lot of their hand crews. Susan Harley and I believe Susan Rinker are the local ones here, but each district will have people who manage their signups for their RT-130s, their arduous pack test, and getting signed up for their hand crews as well.
All righty. Yeah, actually, I've had a conversation with a guy in the Florida Forest Service, and he said, talk to other people who have gone out and find out who the good contractors are to go with, you know.
Sure.
I'm sure there's an array of different
yeah, you can go with
different teams.
You can go with Western contractors too. It's just these are our Florida ones, and usually they staff them with Florida people. So you'll know them. I like to say, if you're an engine boss, find 2 crew members you like, bring an entire engine crew to the contractor, whoever you want to go with, and say, hey, I've got a crew, and then you go with the people you like. That's the biggest thing I find in anything you're doing out there is who you're working with. If you just fly out west and work with one of the big Western contractors, you may get great people, you may not. You don't know it. And that's probably the biggest challenge as a new person going. I encourage them to go with someone they know.
All right. And so this is the continuation of the same question from Anonymous, and I'm going to read it out there, but I'm not really sure. Also, do you ask weekly if you're good to go? Not really sure. I guess just you check in occasionally to make sure that they're still available, or I'm not quite sure.
Correct. I think what they're asking there, that also, do you ask weekly if you're good to go? Do you typically drive engines or fly out commercial? So what they're saying is if they're available and you have resource orders, like checking in with people. I recommend it when you talk to the contractor, whoever you want to go with. Say the dates you're available, and then they'll get a hold of you as soon as they have resource orders. Usually what I'll do is I'll send out a huge group text or message a bunch of people who I knew were ready to go. Say, hey, double check, are you packed? You got your 14-day bag ready? Are you ready to go? Still same dates? And I'll start making crews, putting them together. Early in the season, if you're going on an engine, you'll probably be driving it out, and be prepared for a 3 to 5 day drive. Depends where you're going. It's usually multiple days. If it's later season, you'll probably be flown out and do a crew swap. So that helps out in time wise. If you can't go as long, the drive definitely adds to your time being away.
Sure, definitely. All right. Well, I'm glad you understood that one more than I did.
No worries.
Okay. I have another, not so much a question, but I'll let you kind of talk a little bit. I was actually on a nationwide conference call with Brent one time, and they were just explaining how California was just starting their certified burn boss program. Yeah. And I kind of texted him back, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand. And he goes, oh yeah, California doesn't have burn bosses only Cal Fire does prescribed fire in California. That's why they don't burn enough. So like that blew me away because I was kind of not born and raised here, but came up professionally in Florida. So this is all I've ever known. So I assume we have the same thing going on nationwide. And it was just surprising, and you kind of touched on those numbers about how, we burn so much more than California does, prescribed burn, I should say.
Yeah, on that, I was actually, Brett had mentioned before, there's several Florida burners like Leanna Quinn Davidson. She's actually gone out there and it's helping them start up and get their prescribed burns going. There's a lot of Florida burners who've moved out west. I had several friends move to Oregon and Washington in the last couple of years, and they're helping run fire programs and parks and natural lands out there as well. But I believe it's 12 states, a lot of them being in the Southeast, are the ones with burn boss programs. Florida being one that has a very, very strong program. And just going off of California, how far you can get backlogged. We know that Florida is a very rapid growth. It's one of the very moist, wet ecosystems. We have a high humidity. We're not the dry Southwest where it's a brittle index. But in our area, our growth, South Florida, when I'd burn in the Everglades, you could clear a trail, burn it, and then come back a year later and you could barely get, a person down that trail. Extreme growth. California and some of the West may be a little slower in areas, but still, if they have 20, 30, 50, even 80 years of fire suppression in areas, it's caused extreme fuel buildup. And from similar articles I was reading, like the NPR one, they've stated that they need to burn almost 20 million acres just to get back a little bit of a stability in their fire rotation. And the wildfires are going to do that eventually anyway. But it's going to take them many years to build that program. So Florida burners and places like the Florida Fire Council, helping them get councils going, people like Leanna, who's doing that as well. I think that's going to be critical in getting their ecosystems turned around, better managed, just to stop these mega fires or at least minimize their impact. Because otherwise, it's going to take a half dozen years of these mega fires to consume a lot of fuel out there. And then, you'll have it burnt for a while before they burn again. But that's a whole nother story about managing land all over the country. I won't get into that.
Yeah, but it is amazing that I think I don't want to say spoiled, but we're really lucky to have a good burn program and recognized by the state and laws to protect burners, and that private landowners, small government agencies, large government agencies, statewide, national, federal, we're all able to burn our property so that we can keep up with that and stay ahead of the curve instead of areas like California or out west where, it would be impossible to catch up with it with such a small group of prescribed burners, certified burners.
Absolutely. And just looking at those acreage, 1.6 million for Florida, 35,000 for California. You got to consider California is over 2.5 times the size of the state of Florida as well. So there's a lot of land out there to manage. They have a larger population for their land, but population density in many areas is still very similar. So Florida burners experience in the urban interface, which we talked some about earlier, and many of you on here have experience with that. That is critical to pass that skill along out there. You can see how many homes every year out west are lost due to wildfire. There's always a threat in prescribed burn that something bad could happen. But the numbers in prescribed burn and the acres we get with minimal damage and minimal destruction compared to what is a wildfire, plus the ecological benefit of it is, it's no price tag can be put on it. I believe California spends over $2 billion a year on wildfire suppression, but budgets for many of those states are in the maybe tens of millions for prescribed fire, or even focuses on, land management like that. So it would be great if we could flip those numbers around and actually do a lot more prescribed fire, get more of the country, at least in ecosystems that are managed through prescribed fire, to utilize things, what we do in Florida and the knowledge that we have in Florida. Zach Prusak, what he's been doing for years promoting this has been phenomenal. I think everyone in this room and in this meeting has done a phenomenal job in spreading it. And if you go out west, I continue to encourage you to do so. Like stories we told of Mike Orlando, his impact out there, there's no doubt those guys are like, we want to learn more about these Florida burners, or hey, if they ever get PFTC going in Florida again, maybe we should come down and see it. That's a great program to get Western firefighters or Northern firefighters introduced in, we burn when it's green, we burn when it's 70, 80% humidity. That's not a problem. Stuff they wouldn't think would even start to burn is ripping down here. So it's different fuels. We have our own challenges versus what California has, but it's how many people are willing to manage it with good fire that can stop these bad fires.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got another question. Do you provide line gear and radios on assignments?
We do have a handful of line gear. We definitely provide radios and shelters. Those are usually expensive things that a lot of people don't have. We encourage you to bring your own Nomex and as much gear as you do have, because there's times out west, we'll have hundreds of people out there and you just don't have enough gear to go around. So bring as much as you can. I encourage people while you're working for an agency, start buying your own stuff on the side. That's what I did so I could go out west. I bought my own line gear. I bought my own Nomex. And then I would just borrow a radio and a shelter when I went with a contractor. Forestry also has some gear that they give out as well. I don't know what extent, but I know it's been years since I've gone with them. They did have shelters and stuff before, and some yellow packs they'd hand out.
All righty, very good. Well, I think that's all our questions. Thank you very much, David. That was an excellent presentation, and I think it's really interesting. I think it would be fun and exciting to be able to go out west and kind of see how different things are out there from what we do here. But definitely an
Come on
important
out
learning
with us, Ben.
experience. Well, not necessarily me personally.
You'd be
But,
great.
yeah,
And
very
great talking
good.
to everyone. Great seeing my friends. And hopefully I'll see you in person next year.
All righty, thank you, David.
Thank you.